All right. Welcome to week 7. So today we're going to talk about AI and information. So the idea here is now what happens when what AI does to public information system, like news, audio, video that people encounter online, the platforms, and actors that produce and distribute them, right? Like so, the idea is that with AI now, content production is extremely cheap, right? So that's the main premise, and we will build upon like, okay, what happens when production is extremely cheap. We're gonna look at a bunch of different arguments around this. Again, the main thing to keep in mind is this is not just thinking about, okay, AI is enabling the production of content, including bad content like deepfakes, which are non-consensual, things like that, and so it's going to be doom, or that it's going to be, everything is going to be okay. It's a very nuanced argument that we want to make here. Um, Okay, so the main issue that I want to make is around this sort of the one of the main issues that we want to talk about is the problem of moderation, right? Like so, previously when we looked at information on platforms like social media, the older problem that the platforms had was, there was a lot of human generated content. Okay, we didn't call it human generated content, we just call it content. And the problems that platforms had was how do we rank, recommend, moderate, upvote, downvote, things like that. So that was the old problem. The new problem with generative AI is that because content production is cheap, almost for free, right? Like so, you can now generate anything that you want, like images, videos, text, audio, any of these. What happens when this becomes cheap, personalized, and effective? So now the bottleneck is no longer the generation. So previously, because humans were limited, human attention, human capability was limited, the generation was not very scalable. But now generation scales with compute. So the more compute you have, let's say if I'm a nation state, I have a big data center full of like 100,000 GPUs or a million GPUs, so I can easily overwhelm any production. Like I can generate infinite amounts of content. Previously, if I was whatever the GRU or a bad actor, then I had to recruit people who had the competency and all of that to generate this sort of content. So now the bottleneck is verification. So things like journalistic sources, fact checkers, distribution mechanisms, trust and time, things like that. And so this is mainly, this lecture is about this understanding the information economics and what happens when production is cheap. So uh, we are going to touch at these concepts of misinformation and like deep fakes and things like that, but it's going to be much more than that. So again, like the main premise here is not thinking of these in terms of the binaries. Like, I mean, this I've been saying now for every week almost in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So if you think of, okay, AI and information, if you think of the panic frame is that, okay, there are these deep fakes, this is the end of democracy, end of everything, right? Like, so that's one line of argument. Obviously, it's a very bad argument. Nobody is making that kind of argument, but it's one of these extremes where, okay, now there are deep fakes, and so nothing we see is believable, right? Like, so that's the panic frame. That's, I think, too easy to make that kind of case. So, and too easy to dismiss as well. And the other end is this sort of, okay, everyone has, there were deep fakes, or like people have been lying online previously. So, nothing will change because of AI. I think that's also like a dismissal argument. That's also not the right framing to think of. So in this lecture, like we did with the past 3 weeks or so, we'll think about the mechanism. So okay, now what has changed, and how does that impact various things? So what got cheaper, what got harder, who benefits, where does verification fail, and things like that. So let's first look at one aspect of this content AI and information production, which is moderation, right? Like so, before generative AI, one of the hard problems for social media was moderation, which is deciding what to do with the contents that humans posted. And so there's a huge lecture, like a 1 hour lecture on why AI can or cannot do moderation. That Narayan and Kapoor. This is chapter 6. I will upload a video that I recorded last year about this, which is, I think it's still relevant, like for some of this context. If you have time, you can watch that. So okay, let's think about what was moderation previously. Moderation was this idea that there is a set of rules which decides what counts as harm or satire, news, harassment, incitement, misinformation, things like that. Then there is context. A lot of the content is misinformation or not, is hateful or not, depending on the context, the language, speaker, target, timing, local politics, a bunch of things like that. And governance. So what do you do? Like, okay, I detected that something is hateful or something is harmful or something is wrong, false, misinformation. What do you do with that? How do you enforce it? How do you make sure that there is an appeal process, there's transparency, there's consistency, accountability, and so on? And previously, AI was supposedly thought of as something that could help with this and try to solve some of these moral, political problems underneath. So I will upload a lecture video about why that may have been like wishful thinking. Like there's a lot of problems with each of these, like the policy, context, and governance. And even if you had AI that works really well, which we almost have now, like we still have the problem of moderation because there are new problems that have come up that we'll see in the next a few slides. But there's also, just tackling and solving these problems. It's not just a technical issue. Okay, so why was content moderation really hard? Like, and why does AI not help fully solve this? Right, like so there's context. Means meaning is situational, so a classifier that ignores the sort of speaker, target, timing will mislabel. There's issues with scale, which means like volume, languages, and speed exceed what humans can recover. So here's some place like where AI can actually help. There's problems of evasion, means adversaries will continuously adapt, turning to a moving target for moderation. So if you have a mechanism to detect something in an automated way, people will come up with mechanisms that evade that. And we've seen this, like, I mean, this is an age-old trick, like, every moderation mechanism that people have, there will be an adversary that will try to crack this. Then there is the problem of incentives. We'll talk about incentives in the current AI-driven era in a second. But there's incentives like platform design, for instance, where recommendation algorithms are, a lot of the cases, money, for instance, plays a big role in what systems amplify, what the platforms themselves amplify. That then moderation will has to clean up. Legitimacy is the problem where the platform decides it is exercising power over speech and must justify it through some sort of appeals and transparency. So none of these go away with generative AI, right? Like so, the problem of none of these go away fully with the help of generative AI. There's a now a new problem that is added because of generative AI, which is the problem of abundance, which is the problem that content can be produced almost infinitely freely, right? And so if moderation was hard because of all these problems previously, without the availability of like an AI that can make content production fully free. I mean, we also have other types of AI that make some of these problems a bit more tractable. Maybe now we have AI that understands context. Maybe we have AI that can scale very well. Maybe we have AI that is intelligent enough that you cannot evade it with, say, example, like some very simple tricks and things like that. So there's progress in here as well. But there's this other big elephant in the room, which is the fact that we are now able to have this sort of abundance of content production. So each modality, like text, image, voice, music, video, has gotten just cheaper to create, and distribution was already free, right? Like meaning you would always post for free. So the binding cost moves from creation, um, moves to creation, which now AI collapses. And so the practical consequence is that the right unit of analysis is not just a single piece of content anymore, right? Like so you're able to generate these pieces of content almost instantly. It's more about this sort of pipeline. There's a very interesting like science paper that talks about this sort of pipeline now, which is new, completely new, that is enabled by generative AI. Previously, it was that humans would have to have a large team of experts who had the right types of skills. Like for instance, generating a deepfake video would have taken like weeks of effort for a highly specialized, sophisticated, technically skilled people to generate. Now it's just a click of a button. I can generate my own deepfake or a deepfake of anyone else, right? Like so, unless there's some sort of guardrails. So there is this sort of interesting problem of you can prompt to generate, but you can remix, localize, post, observe, adapt. Like I think this is the loop that is very interesting. So it's this sort of generate, vary, target, publish, measure, and adapt. So you can, because content production is cheap, you can just target infinitely. So you can say, okay, I want to reach this specific audience. Let's say, I don't know, white male who is 18 to 21 years old, who lives in Minnesota, who is interested in drinking beer or whatever, right? Like, so you can generate content that is hyper specific. Okay, I generated some content because now that's cheap. I can target endlessly and see, okay, what is the content that these people of this highly specific demographic will engage in. And then, okay, if I see, okay, I generated a certain type of meme or a certain type of content, if they don't engage in it, like then I can vary that content, generate a new piece of content, repeat this process of varying, target, publish, measure, and adapt. Uh, uh, Okay, so here this pipeline is very important. So if you judge this one post at a time, the AI looks like really unimpressive and easy to spot. But if you judge this as a system that continuously optimizes against feedback, it can matter even though any single output may or may not be that good, which I think now AI is getting so good and will become even more better, that this problem of like, okay, not looking good or not looking human like is not going to be a problem in the coming years. So this sort of uh, problem of abundance combined with this sort of loops, right, like of vary, target, publish, measure, and adjust, is I think a new problem that generative AI has created. And there are ways to uh, like break this loop, right? Like, and a big problem of that, big part of that breaking of that loop is the platforms, right? Like, so previously distribution was free and cheap. Obviously, distribution plus moderation. Moderation was always there. That kind of tried to break that loop. But now that sort of distribution loop, where you don't have this ability to just constantly readjust, like, and have this sort of loop of generating content, posting it, measuring how well it does, varying the content if it doesn't work well, and kind of trying to find the best fit. So that works in an environment where there is infinite distribution capability, but you should be able to have a way to disrupt that distribution mechanism. But there are instances where this distribution mechanism may not want to be disrupted because of the incentives that the platform has or the incentives that the bad actors have, right? So there are examples of this. AI slop. Slop is a term for like low quality content, right? Like AI slop is low quality content generated in bulk. It exists because of two main reasons. One is this sort of incentives for the bad actors, and the other is incentives for the platforms. So there are things like programmatic advertising, search engine optimization, engagement based recommendations these are all platform specific ways to make sure that they engage people, keep them on the platform, and they reward volume currently. And generative AI makes this sort of volume infinitely free. So producing slop has positive economics, even though single pieces of content is almost necessarily worthless. And there's a lot of evidence that this is happening right now. There's this really interesting report by NewsGuard, which is again like in the AI years, like it's already a bit old, 2025, but it has some really good, interesting examples of how this loop of being able to generate infinitely cheap content creates this sort of AI content farms that just overwhelm a lot of the information ecosystem that we rely on. And it's not just that there's these AI farms that are creating the bad content. The platforms are also in on it in a certain extent because they want content that is engaging, that keeps people on their platform. And I'll show you an example of how prevalent this is and how much the platforms are involved in the distribution of content like this. Like platforms like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, for instance, are always they want the inventory of content to be large enough so that you can have content to show to people. So if you have large enough amount of content, you will have a large enough amount of interesting content that people will engage with. And so the idea here is if you don't curtail this posting of information, then at some point there'll be some information that people are more likely to engage. And a lot of the times this will lead to low quality, like really bait kind of content or spam kind of content being promoted, which is happening right now. And it can also be, it's not just an economic problem. There's also these problems of lethality. There were books on Amazon. Even now to date, this is a problem. I started reading a book by a popular journalist, Joanna Stern, and she was posting on Twitter that her book has a bunch of knockoffs which are AI generated. So any book that is published on Amazon, now immediately people will take the book, feed it into AI, create an AI cover, create an AI generated summary, create AI generated comments on it, and rewrite it and then publish it also on Amazon, which is almost again now infinitely cheap. And there are cases like this where there are AI generated books that misidentified mushrooms, and that could be problematic because mushrooms can be poisonous. So here we looked at these two types of incentives, one for the creators, one for the distributors, which is the platform. So here, especially for the creators, the ad arbitrage, like so even if you just overwhelm the platform with low quality content, large amounts of it, because the ad arbitrage, even if it's like a hundredth of a cent per impression, like then you will, if you accrue like millions, if not tens of millions of views, then you will get a large enough ad volume. Especially, this 404 Media here has a really nice piece showing how this is a big business in some of the global South countries where even just a few $100s a month is a large amount of money to be made. So one interesting thing, I hope you will have the time to look at these meta transparency reports. So even today, the transparency reports are lagged by at least a quarter, if not 2 quarters, I think. So the last transparency report that Meta put out is like 2 quarters away, like Q4 2025. And there, like it's full of like the most commonly viewed content is full of like AI generated slop, like all and they have tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of views. And again, firstly, definitely the platform is in on this. It shouldn't be that big of a problem for Facebook, given its moderation infrastructure, its technical capabilities, and everything to detect and take these content down. But some of these like rage bait kind of content or surprising content or things like that are very common, or very popular with Facebook. So one of the popular videos that I saw in the top 5 was some child falling into a den there was a tiger in there. It's all AI generated. It's maybe for me or for a trained eye, it's clear that's AI generated, but for many people, it may not be AI generated, may not be clear that it's AI generated. But anyway, so this kind of you should look at that report. Like, it's a very, very interesting thing that kind of, I mean, so an easy argument to make here is that, okay, this is all bad actors who are, want to make an extra buck, or who want to do spread propaganda, things like that. But you can clearly see, like, that the clear, simple solutions for taking down such type of content are not being enforced even after, I don't know, 10 years of battering Facebook with, hey guys, like, do better with moderation, like, don't like engage these spammy or rage bait, or this type of content. You still see that sort of thing, and because there's an economic value to it. Okay, there's also AI inside of our journalism. So the common assumption is that AI content is only in these sort of fringes of the information ecosystem, like fake news websites, for instance. It is also a fact that this is common in mainstream newsrooms that we all consume. So there's this very interesting study by Russell et al., which studied around 1,500 news papers, US-based newspapers, around 186,000 articles from these newspapers, and they find that around 9% of the content is AI generated, fully or partly. So it's, I mean, we'll see what this means. And it's also a bit uneven. So the large newspapers, the national newspapers, it's around 2%, 1.7%. In the smaller ones, it's 10%. So it's much, much more in the smaller ones. And the small AI generated content obviously will have much more likelihood. I mean, this is 8 times more likely to have like things like hallucinations, unsupported claims, and things like that. And in all of these cases, there's no disclosure that these articles were written by AI. So the point here is not that just because there's AI generated content that we are all consuming. If a large newspaper in the US will reach like tens of millions of people. So if tens of millions of people are reading something that is AI generated, then it doesn't mean that it's all false. It's just that AI can we really have to think about accountability. So who made it, who benefits, who stands behind it, like, what if there's a hallucination in there? If people are not disclosing and using AI, then it's highly likely that there might be errors in there, and the problem is with this sort of accountability and disclosure. Okay, so now let's move to the second argument, which is, okay, there's a lot of content that is being produced. So what is the consequence of that? Right? Like, so one is the sort of, the bad actors can get some monetary benefits out of it. So what else can happen, especially in terms of users? So there's this very nice paper by Nyhan et al. Like, these are all political scientists. They make this argument that production is cheap, but beliefs are not easy to make. So most people, especially political beliefs. So if you want to persuade people to believe a certain type of viewpoint, or because again, like the argument, at least in the political science circles, is that election interference or election manipulation or propaganda and things like that. So if Russia can just bombard a certain set of people with pro Donald Trump content, let's say, then are people more likely to believe it, because now content generation is infinitely cheap? Like, is that going to be a problem? So that's one argument that people makes, and this paper makes the argument that it may not be, right. Like, the reason is, one is this: people don't consume that much amount of political content. This is well known in political science. I mean, if you're reading news every day, that's actually, you are in the maybe 5 to 10% of the people who read news regularly. Most people just don't read newspapers or engage in politics regularly. So attention and not supply. So supply is now infinite, but attention is not infinite. People's attention to political content is not that high at all. So in 2016, we had a similar panic 10 years ago around how social media might be the cause of Donald Trump being elected, for instance, and that turned out to be false. Like again, despite popular belief that because Trump campaign ran this sort of special whatever targeting, and they were able to win the election, it's not true at all. Like that is not if you there's a lot of careful studies that I cite here that show that that was not the case. And things like algorithms were not shown to be the cause of mass polarization, because most people are not trapped in these echo chambers or read news or engage in politics all the time. Many people, majority of the people, don't care at all. Obviously, there is a small minority that consumes most of the false content, and it's going to be the same case with AI. A small minority of the people who are active and engaged in politics, in general in the US, it's mostly old, right-leaning people. They are more likely to be impacted here. So here we need to think about a baseline, right? When we are thinking about impacts of AI in terms of propaganda, politics, and things like that. Only 0.15% of Americans' media diet contain any sort of false information, like a fake news or low quality content being consumed during the 2016 election. So we need to have that in mind. Uh, the other is, okay, let's say if there is a certain fraction of this population, part of the population that might be persuaded by AI, like that still consume political content, that are active and things like that. So even here, like even among the people who consume information and might be bombarded with AI generated content, AI generated content can persuade, but not so well. So there's this very interesting Costello paper in Science 2024, which showed that AI-based persuasion is really good, can change people's perceptions very easily. But yeah, this is in a lab-based setting. So in carefully measured situations, these dialogues can, conversation with AI can shift beliefs. So in terms of conspiracy beliefs, for instance, yeah, there's huge changes. Uh, but the idea here is it's not specific targeting or personalization. It's mostly based on facts and evidence, and most of the time in the wild, people engaging with facts and evidence is not that common. So this is not going to happen in the wild. So that's an argument that's being made by some of these papers, especially Alte and so on. There's also a technical aspect to this. So there's this trade-off between persuasiveness and accuracy. And again, like this is for a certain generation of models. Persuasion and truth, like they pull there are two dimensions that pull apart, like there's a trade-off there. And then people are also very skeptical of content once it is labeled as AI generated. So anything even if it is true, people will say, okay, this is AI generated, so I don't really care about it, or I don't like it. So okay, now let's look at this case study of deep fakes. So in 2024, many observers expected that 2024, like the 50% of the world had elections, world population. So and elections across dozens of countries. And people were hoping or expecting that these AI deepfakes, because AI was maturing at that time, and AI deepfakes were becoming more and more commoditized, will have a huge impact on these electoral outcomes. And the evidence does not seem to be supporting this, right? A large analysis of the 2025 Canadian election were really showed very minor impacts in terms of reach or beliefs, right? So only 0.12% of all the views of content that people saw were deep fakes or misinformation or false information created by using AI. Similar studies in UK, France, European Union elections also found similar low, if not non-existent effects. I have similar study in India during the elections, national elections in India, which shows something similar. So yeah, AI has these sorts of superhuman persuasion, But this kind of thing is only happens in a very specific, targeted, lab-based setting. It is not does not seem to have happened in the wild, especially during elections. And so this kind of fits this prediction of like this AI and normal technology, AI as normal technology, where these fears of superhuman persuasion are unfounded, partly because persuading people to act against their own interests or to change their beliefs on who they vote for is very, very hard. It's not an easy thing. So this is something that we need to keep in mind, right? Like, and I'll give you some other examples of like why it is may be true right now, or we did not find evidence until now, but it may not be true in the future. Uh, okay, so another half of this, like okay, there's deep fakes and no impact, but there's another half of this with the help of like AI and deepfakes. What actors can do cheaply, which is that people may not it can in terms of the capabilities of like platforms, states, and even small actors who may not have resources. Uh, Even sophisticated information influence operations used to struggle to produce plausible, locally tailored content across languages and personas. Like this was a huge problem with the Russian influence operation in 2016, like where there was very clear evidence that okay, all of these people were sitting in St. Petersburg, Russia, and some of them did not have the local US cultural knowledge, so they wrote in broken English and things like that. Now that kind of problem is solved to a certain extent, right? Like so you can create this sort of high volume, stylistically varied, adaptive messaging that benefits lower capacity actors the most, which is again, if it benefits the lower capacity actors the most, it also benefits the high capacity like state actors, for instance. And so, I mean, output does not mean persuasiveness. Again, that's important. So there is, Russian state campaigns, an analysis of that, which found that their AI adoption expanded output, but it did not change persuasiveness. But I think, again, like some of these we'll find out later, like, maybe there is already a very creative and unknown use case of AI where we don't have the detection tools, and we'll realize later that the harm has been done. So that's why you should be careful that, okay, whatever we have evidence for, like, is that there was no impact of deepfakes or AI in the 2024 election, but it does not mean that it's not either already happening or will not happen in the future. Uh, what else could be done? If persuasiveness is hard, there is because of limited attention, prior beliefs. In general, it's very hard to change people's beliefs. So this part still is very hard. But things like flooding the zone, which is a very common Russian tactic, and many other bad actors also use this. Propaganda is also a form of this, which is either harassment or flooding the zone. So persistent personalized abuse or content generation imposes real-time costs, like things like time, stress, and safety. It deters activism and participation even when the target believes nothing, meaning there is you know even if people are not persuaded or don't believe in it, this creates this sort of incentive for where there's these problems of time, stress, and safety. So AI, because it cuts the labor, the volume and persistence will rise. Attention limits persuasion, but it does not limit harassment. That's why cheap content can harm without changing single beliefs. And this is where, again, distribution will matter a lot, like distribution moderation. And platforms should invest in making sure that this kind of vector of flooding the zone with not necessarily false content, but just content that is benign, even with just drowns out the truth or drowns out the real information is a problem. Another problem here that is a vector of creating harm is not in terms of what content is produced, but where the content is produced, like how the content is produced, which is the model themselves. Social media are controlled, mostly worked after the fact, right? Like, which is, okay, there's someone, because this was bottlenecked by production, people had the luxury of saying, okay, we'll have some teams that will take down content. So this worked to a certain extent. But with AI, this lever is moving upstream, where people could also potentially embed their preferred narratives through in the model itself. Like there is some very interesting studies, including a very recent 2026. I think it was in Nature, I think. This Hannah White study, which is very interesting, showing that Chinese, Russian, US based models, they have this sort of way to embed their narratives in the training data. So, again, like this is part of what I was saying earlier, that there could be these sorts of mechanisms that are being used that we are not aware of, that could, potentially be used to influence or target and things like that. And this is not just only Chinese or Russian or Iranian or whatever country that we don't like necessarily. This is also happening to us. Even democratic governments, like our own government, for instance, uses things like regulation and pressure to shape model behavior, which again we sometimes may be aware of, sometimes may not be aware of. Like for instance, the recent uh, scuttle between Anthropic and Department of Defense, for instance, is something where it brought into public light that there were these attempts, or probably operations already going on for spying on Americans with their use of AI and things like that. Okay, so another problem with this content generation becoming cheap is generation is scaling with compute. You have agents, cheap variation, marginal cost. It's automated completely. There's endless possibilities. Verification, which is the problem of fact checking, making sure it's correct. It kind of has this scalability problems with expertise, institutions, time, trust, which is all human related problems. And so this is a core mechanism of the week, which is how do you make sure that this generation and verification match each other. Like I think that's a very interesting future work that people are now thinking about. So because verification sounds like one thing, like checking if something is true or not, but it's like actually a bundle of different distinct questions, and a piece of content can pass one while fail others. So there could be things like events, like did this event happen? Is the timing right? Source, like who produced this? Who are they accountable for it? Media, is this image audio or video authentic? Has it been altered or synthesized? Context, again, like we looked at some of these in the earlier, older definitions of like or what content moderation could do. Is there coordination? Like, is this an organic post, or is it part of a larger organized campaign? And each of these will take different kinds of skills and evidence. And the second point is around distribution, which is people who are least equipped to do this kind of work, which are like people like you and me. I mean, we don't have the time or the tools to know, for instance, if something is coordinated posting or someone is genuinely posting it, right? And this has been a huge problem. And similarly, people with who are supposed to do this type of work, like fact checkers or journalists, for instance, the institutions built to verify newsrooms, for instance, are losing resources at the same time that this kind of content is exploding. And the one example of newsrooms losing resources comes from this fact that now content generation is infinite, but the resources that people like the newsrooms get is being scuttled also because of this. While at the same time, this information, the top of the funnel is becoming broader. So previously, publisher, the content reached the user directly. Then there was this search, like, okay, people search for content. I want to read about Donald Trump. I search for Donald Trump. I would get the information. Then there's a social feed, like people didn't get exposed to it on social feeds. Now you get it through chatbot more and more. So chatbots clean news questions, there's again, like, there's ongoing work here. I cite some work here that shows a lot of problems with referrals, but also accuracy. Then AI search also draws from a narrower range of sources and ones with lower credibility. And there's also a lot of evidence that show that these AI overviews, which now previously you would search, you get a New York Times article, click on it, go to New York Times to read that. But now that's not happening. You directly get your answer on Google search, so you're not going to New York Times. So their ad revenues would now collapse. And 1% of searches where a user clicks a source cited inside an AI summary, right? The amount of citations to these where the content actually came from is also reducing. Uh, the number of clicks to these news articles are also decreasing. So this is a bigger problem than deepfakes, is this sort of like AI as a middleman to the actual content, where to a lot of the information providers, like high quality information providers, is something that is really, really dangerous. And they kind of are an extractive mechanism where they are scraping a lot of content but are not giving back much of the referral. So you see these very big numbers. Like, again, these numbers are at a certain time point measured in a certain way. So there's some biases here, but roughly they give you the scale. Like, so basically, if OpenAI is scraping 1,000 pages, they have one link that is provided back to these. Roughly, again, some of these numbers are overhyped for a certain reason, like this, whatever, Cloudflare wants to sell their business, and so they want to frame it a certain way. But anyway, so this is a problem, definitely, that this search index your content and send readers back to them in return. Like, that was the bargain previously, but now you're indexing the content, but you just keep them on your own platform. You're not sending them back to the news platform. So that's a big problem. And a lot of lawsuits, like New York Times with OpenAI, for instance, are now looking at that, and that hopefully will change or should change. Now let's look at the problem of deepfakes. Deepfakes, we hear these sorts of arguments that now that the content that is audio visual, previously we could believe in it, now we don't believe in it. And so they attack this sort of old instinct that whatever you see and hear is evidence or is real. So this is a very intuitive argument, right? Like, people say, yeah, whatever you could see is what you could believe, but now what you see is not necessarily what you believe. So this kind of salience is exactly why deepfakes really dominate public discussion out of proportion to their measured effects. As the earlier election evidence showed, like, their demonstrated impact on votes or mass opinion has been so far modest. It does not mean they're harmless. It means that a lot of the harm is just overhyped to a certain extent. And the documented harm is actually very concentrated and specific, not the sort of broad deepfakes equals end of democracy. So we'll look at some of these concentrated harms. So one is this: a lot of the deepfakes are used to be, at least in 2025, on publicly identifiable women, mostly celebrities, without consent. Like, so a lot of these were just non-consensual nude content from celebrity women. And I mean, this is, unfortunately, I just read a paper like 2 weeks ago that showed that this is changing now. So it was 96% used to be celebrities. Now it's, I think, 75% or something. So 25% of it is like normal people, family, friends, people they're being deepfaked more and more. Again, the brunt of this is um, impacts women, unfortunately. But yeah, there is that problem, which is this concentrated harm. Uh, and there's also this sort of very targeted scam kind of problem. So a lot of these will have deepfakes, which have either a video or audio. Audio deepfakes are really hard to detect convincingly, especially if someone is calling you on the phone. And so there were many high-profile cases like this where people will make a deepfake audio call or video call, and these will get more and more common. So there should be some again, like this is very niche. It's not like everyone will fall for this. Again, there's a certain warming up period where there might be some high profile incidents, but this is not like everyone is being inundated by these. But it's a thing, definitely. And then the bigger worrying thing is also children, like AI generated child abuse material is prevalent, is circulating. Again, like this, I mean, it's a hard argument to make, but there's a like this sort of argument around like, okay, if there is CSAM, like it's child sexual abuse material, if it's synthetic or artificial, maybe that's better. But there's again like very good arguments to be made on why that is also a really, really bad thing, because that kind of mainstreams it or normalizes it and things like that, like so, which is really bad. So this is also again a very niche thing, but is very concentrated and harmful. So the takeaway here is low reach, or deepfakes do not have a lot of impact, but it does not mean they do not have a lot of harm, especially these sorts of things like non-consensual imagery or video, fraud, harassment, and abuse. They are very, very damaging to a specific set of people. The other is also very important, which is low harm until now. I think I made this argument earlier, like, or until now, or because we don't have evidence until now, doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean there's going to be no harm in the future. Like for instance, in 2024, maybe the timing is not the right thing, right? Like at least there was no massively commoditized way to uh, produce deepfakes at scale, right? Like at least in 2024. Now we do. Like there's a lot of like models that can produce really high quality synthetic audio, video, images, and so on. Now, like I can just click a button in my ChatGPT to generate like very realistic images, very realistic videos or audio. That was not possible in 2024. So now I think the problem with deepfakes may be on a different scale and a different kind of vector than what it was in 2024. Uh, so the most durable danger from deepfakes may be the opposite of what people expect. It's not that this, at least this was the main argument made from 2024, is this problem of the liar's dividend, because just that the mere possibility of fakes lets liars dismiss real evidence, right? Like once people know that these fakes exist, the guilty can just say, yeah, this is all AI, right? Like even though it is real. And there is, a lot of these very interesting legal takes by Citron et al., like which call this the liar's dividend, right? Like as public learns that convincing fakes exist, anyone caught with an authentic video or audio claim that it was AI generated. Uh, so perversely here, the more successfully we educate people about deepfakes, the more cover this gives to the dishonest. In 2024, an Indian politician actually called an authentic photo of a large rival rally AI generated. I mean, this happened in India, but also in the US. I think Trump also was, calling a lot of Harris rallies as AI generated. Uh, so empirically, there's some nuance here. A large survey experiment found that just crying misinformation does measurably help politicians evade accountability and works better than apologizing, but mainly against like text-based reports. It's weaker against video evidence still, like, but as video gets more and more realistic and believable and better, I think the broader cost is corrosive, right? Like so, it's not that the deepfakes themselves have created a problem. It's more around the sort of shared evidentiary ground. Like previously, if you had tape that this happened, like that was enough. But now, the tape is no longer enough. Okay, the final problem that we're going to talk about in the AI information space is this problem of corruption, or like whatever information ecosystem, like corrupting the training data where it is learning from. And we see this to a certain extent, like AI, ChatGPT learned a lot from the open web. Things like sources like Wikipedia or Stack Overflow, where this was all human-generated knowledge. And as we see now, like I mean, I haven't gone to Stack Overflow in the last 2 years or 3 years, and there's a huge plummet in the use of Stack Overflow. And so the incentive to create original human content declines, even though the total volumes rise, because most of the content is being produced by AI. And so the base where AI is learning from will just thin out. And so parts of the web are just turning AI to AI, right? Like so, there's AI generates the content, AI ingests the content, learns from it, and there's a cycle. And obviously, this is a shared pollutant, right? Like low quality stuff. So it fills the open web, and there's a lot of studies that show that this is now a big part of the web. Like 50% of the content that the web that is created on the web is AI generated now. And because future models will use this, there's this sort of problem of the feedback loop, which is that a model that is trained on its own output will collapse eventually, like leading to really bad quality outcomes. So there's a very good paper on this in Nature in 2024. And there's also this sort of problems of this concept called brain rot, which is that if you train on low quality, high engagement junk and reasoning and safety will degrade, and it's a big problem. But obviously, it's not all like this feedback loop assumes that everything is just automated and there's no thinking. Like I mean, you and me are thinking about these problems. Obviously, the people who are developing these are also thinking about them, right? Like it's just not as simple as this is inevitable, right? It's not inevitable. People who are working on these will also know about this, and like we saw, like a lot of the advances these days are not just because, I mean, AI is still improving over the last few years, even though the web is all being polluted, because labs obviously are not just blindly ingesting all the AI generated content that they get. They curate a lot, and the rest is all just we should really resist this sort of doom story of like, oh yeah, everything is going to be bad because the web is now AI generated. Obviously, it is bad, like, but it's not the complete story. And so there is poisoning of the data, and that can create problems like these data voids, like where low quality content goes back, or like sarcasm, and there's evidence of that. Like, but that doesn't mean this is happening all the time, like, or that these labs or people who are developing these AIs are somehow stupid and like are just stuck in this loop, and we'll the models will collapse or something like that. So that's a technical possibility, but doesn't mean it's practically happening. There's also this other aspect. Again, this is my personal experience, a personal favorite, which is that I mean, this kind of democratization of content creation might be good. Like it both in terms of the web, but also in terms of the future that we see. We always think about the worst case scenarios, which are like deep fakes or AI slop and things like that. But here's an example of like, okay, this is a personal video that I generated, like with some AI video pipeline, right? Like, so I have an idea for a song, I wrote the song, I wrote the lyrics with AI, then I generated the music with AI, then I created the images, the storyboard with AI, created the videos with AI, captions with AI, okay, monetize I do not do, but this might be already happening, right? Like, so here's that video, for instance. I mean, if you want to take a look at it. Uh, so this is not necessarily AI slop or AI misinformation. This is, I mean, it's not super high quality video, but it's not, again, like for a novice like me who doesn't know anything about, I'm not a creative, whatever, musician, or like I wouldn't ever have generated something like this. But now, I know a novice like me is able to generate a music video like this. So a professional will be able to have a much higher bar to start with, right? Like, so where they can build much more creative stuff. Similarly, like even for when people say AI is gonna kill the web or something like that, people who would not have written content or generated websites or things like that, and now because the floor to generating content becomes very very low, many more people will start generating content. And again, a lot of that may be slop right now, but it will become better, or it might become better. So it's not necessarily a given. It's not inevitable that this will lead to some sort of collapse of the internet or something like that. So this is uh, yeah, this is not necessarily doom and gloom. So here we should think about problems of authenticity, ownership, labor, taste, platform incentives, and things like that. And I think if we can get this the right way, then we might be able to move towards the web where some of these are valued, right? Like, so if the platform incentivizes instead of volume something like authenticity or taste, then we might get like a web that is like much higher quality, probably because many more people are now able to generate content. This is already happening at scale, like people using AI to be creative for the good and bad. For the bad, I mean, we always hear a lot of these bad first, but I think there might be also some good happening here. So a lot of these there's this platform Deezer, which publishes numbers on AI in music. They show that around 10 to 44% of tracks uploaded are AI generated. Spotify monthly listeners from one AI band, the Velvet Sundown, before it was revealed as AI. Before, people, if they didn't know, they didn't care or didn't know, but that that it was AI, it was quite good. But yeah. So they had around a million monthly listeners. Again, if in the end the quality and the experience that you get, irrespective of whether it was AI generated or human generated, is the same. And if in a blind test you don't care if it's AI generated, like, yeah, it shouldn't matter. But there's also the problems with spam and things like that, like low quality content, because now the floor is floor for entry. So I would never have written a song or generated lyrics or generated the music because I do not have the knowledge or talent or the investment, any of this. But now I can do that, so it will lead to a lot of flood of low quality content for sure. So yeah, there's a fraud version, but there's also some sort of like maybe it's not that bad. Uh, so yeah, cheap to make, but we should make it harder to matter. So it's cheap, but the problem, the incentives, like things like taste, coherence, legal rights, audience, trust, distribution, and recognizable identity. I think these are all very important. Uh, so here it's not very clear if this is gonna like how this will play out. Like I said, like a lot of factors have to come together to make sure that we get this right, where we are encouraging creativity, human creativity and taste, and not necessarily just make the rich get richer. But at the same time, we should also have ways in which we prevent spamming and like slop taking over. So things like yeah, production got free, but taste, trust, rights, distribution, and they all became are still scarce. Okay, so now a few final slides on detection. So if We are being overwhelmed by AI generated content and information production. What about detection? Why are we where are we in terms of detecting what is AI generated? So detectors are always it's the same problem with we started with AI moderation or content moderation. Detectors are that are trained in the lab. They may fail in the wild. And again, these are constantly improving. But the problem here is always that this is a chicken and egg problem. So people develop these detectors. The bad actors or people who want to use these tools, AI tools, can easily jailbreak these detectors and come up with new mechanisms that don't um, uh, detect these AI generated components, like things like taking a screenshot or recompressing it or cropping it and things like that. This is always a structural arms race. There are solutions like provenance, C2PA, for instance, content credentials, where you cryptographically embed. When a media is created, like Google, for instance, already does this. So if you generate any image with Gemini, it'll automatically embed a cryptographic signature in it that kind of keeps track of what modifications were done to that image. Uh, but these are and this is wide ranging, all the big actors like Adobe, Google, Meta, OpenAI are already doing this, but it's very trivial to strip these out, like you just take a screenshot, for instance, or when you upload it to a certain platform, some of them might strip it down. So you upload and download, and then it'll lose that C2PA credentials, things like that. The watermarking, visible or invisible, can be easily erased, especially with some of the open source models. There's a lot of open source models now that are almost as good, if not, they will get as good as the commercial ones. So here, the sort of provenance lets good actors prove authenticity, does not force the bad actors to label deception. So that's the problem here. I think better defense is something that is downstream, which is things like friction, like rate limits, account costs, forwarding limits, circuit breakers, or virality. Like this is the usual stuff that we've already always had. You can also have behavioral defenses, such as targeting the pipeline rather than the artifact. So detecting coordinated posting, reused assets in inauthentic account networks, and so on. Then we can build on literacy campaigns. This is again, all of these are not are some old age stuff, the previous generation stuff. They still hold. Uh, and then uh, Protecting the reference layer. This is a new one, like the things like trusted sources and databases that people and AI systems rely on, like things like C2PA, for instance, or SynthID, that based on if something is present in that database, if it's marked as authentic, and we are able to protect that database, like for instance, then that is a good model. And Again, I'll upload this lecture from that chapter from Narayan Kapoor. We'll see that we have to make sure that this downstream, which is the trusted sources, are have the distribution, platform, a way to the fact checkers, for instance, to distribute their correct information, and are monetized, and build resilience rather than trying to make a model that cannot be misused. Okay, so to summarize, again, like last week, we just look at what is strong evidence, what is weak evidence, what is bad evidence. So the strong evidence is that the production costs uh, in terms of information generation have collapsed. And so AI content farms and low disclosure AI journalism are now common. These are visible. And There's also this problem of the link economy, which used to fund a lot of high quality, high trusted sources like newsrooms. This is now breaking because of this production, AI generated information production. We also have issues with verification, detection, provenance. They're all imperfect and are partially losing. There are some solutions to that, like friction, literacy, and things like that. There's mixed evidence in terms of impacts of deepfakes. The impacts have been modest, but not zero, and it's also very concentrated. We are not very sure about the long-term effects of AI-generated content on trust, journalism's business model, and shared reality. Again, like this argument that AI will completely alter our shared reality may be a bit overstated. It's not. And I cannot make the other argument as well that it is not going to be disrupting our shared reality. It's somewhere in the middle. We don't know. Uh, and so these tactics can work without changing minds, and the slow erosion of trust may matter more than a single persuasive piece of content or a single type of content like a deepfake. Okay, so now let's look at like again a checklist for evaluating any claim about AI, that we do like every week. So first is classifying the problem. Is it the falsity? Is it origin, impersonation, quality, coordination? Is the problem of monetization, harm? What is generated? So is it uh, a piece of text, a single image, cloned voice, fake account, or a combination of all of these? And who benefits? Because this almost always like really explains why the content exists, and how is it distributed, and what would verification actually require? Is it a source, context, provenance, network analysis? So this is kind of takes you back to the thing of like thinking about methods, application, impact from week one applied to this sort of information landscape. So this week, let's look at this exercise. So take one synthetic thing and trace it through the system, right? Like an article or a video or song, a post or a chatbot answer that is synthetic, right? Like that, it was generated with AI. Like try to map it into these 4 dimensions: production, distribution, verification, and incentives. So how it was produced, how it was distributed, what verifying it would take, and who is incentivized to make it. Then try to locate this constraint. Is the problem that it was easy to produce, that it was hard to verify, or that the incentives rewarded? And so the final question is try to answer this. What evidence would make you more worried about AI information, and what evidence would make you less worried? Yeah, so let me know if you have any questions, and then I'll see you next week.